We're now joined by a young man who was very close to it again. This is Evan Fairbanks. He's a freelance photographer. Interestingly enough, you and I were just talking about journalists' emotions at a time like this, and the last thing journalists can afford to do is to fall prey to their emotions at a time like this, because it's too hard in the middle of a story. But you were very close this morning and photographing on assignment for a church when things began to happen. So we're going to show your videotape, if we may, though you're principally a still photographer? Or both?
Still and video.
Okay. Can we just look at what your first video is and explain it to us?
I walked out of Trinity Church after we had a blackout in our studio, and one of the studio managers grabbed one of our cameras when we knew what was happening, and I went out and was shooting aftermath.
Good God.
And I suddenly saw a plane flying into my viewfinder and said, gee, it's kind of close for that to be here now, and then realized what happened.
Yeah.
And
we'll run this again, because I think this is, can we run that again, Roger Goodman? That's Roger Goodman, our director, because this is, we've seen footage before of people on the run, and I understand that that's your shadow as you went by a storefront.
Yeah, actually, it was. It's the first time I've seen that.
And was there absolute panic immediately?
Instantly. It was just pandemonium. Nobody knew what to do. There was no clear thinking. People were just reacting to kind of save themselves and the people around them.
You're in the same location when the building comes down.
I had been taken downstairs by Port Authority police who knew that I had this videotape. And we were moving actually to go back to the Trinity Church to make them a dub of the tape in a format that they could use on a VHS tape. And suddenly I heard one of the guys say, hey, Evan, watch out.
Hang on just a second. If you look in the upper, this now is frozen, and this is an angle of this attack that we have not seen before. At the top of the building on your left, out of the left, become the building, and watch how the aircraft penetrates the building. Go ahead. Completely in one side and out the other.
It just disappeared. It disappeared like a bad special effect. It disappeared right into the building. I've seen it 6, 7 times now. It's still incomprehensible what is actually happening there. You're right. As a journalist, you have to take yourself away from it, and I'm still not there yet. And the more and more I see it, and as time goes by,
the modern technology enables us to see horror just as we are able to see sport in a variety of different speeds, or at a variety of different speeds. And I think you now have a better appreciation than we have had up until now, for which we thank you, Evan, because we see exactly how determined somebody was to do this horrible damage, taking a plane so powerfully and so fast in one side of the building, other. Tell me more what it's been like for you today as working the street.
It's numbing. It's like being in the fourth dimension. It's like it's not even New York City where it's happening. Nothing is normal. People are just walking in a daze up and down the streets. Nobody knows where to go. I just feel kind of this nervous, anxious buzz, and still unfathomable.
Trinity Church, one of the oldest, I think the oldest Episcopal church, certainly in this part of the world, certainly the oldest in the city, on the edge of Wall Street there. Was it being used? Did people come to it for any subsequent occasion?
We were only shooting a kind of a teleconference up in the 4th floor TV studio there. And we were all sitting in the studio about an hour before our airtime, and there was the lights went out for a second, they flickered. And we kind of joked with the studio guys that they had just put in a new studio and said, hey, you guys better watch out for that. That's not normal. And then within 10 seconds, people came running in and said that the Trade Center had been hit. They tried to call a production meeting and ask people to stay in the building, and people were just kind of fleeing. And I grabbed my still camera and was going to run out, not really heeding what anybody was saying there, knowing what was happening outside and feeling the need to be there. And one of the guys came out of the studio with a camera and was putting a tape in it, and I just grabbed it and ran.
And we saw the shadow you running across the street. What was you were afraid of, principally, as you were running?
I was afraid that I was going to be rained upon by whatever was coming off the building. So I knew that I had a few seconds to get basically an establishing shot, and then I had to look out for myself. And I ran I was on the southeast corner of the plaza. I'm not sure exactly what building is there. And I just went around the corner a little south on Church and just got underneath a car and pointed the camera up into the sky and stayed there for a while, and then came out after a few minutes when the debris stopped raining so heavily. And I went around the corner and was pulled under an overhang by a couple of Port Authority police, to whom I immediately mentioned what I had shot. And they just grabbed me and whisked me down into the Port Authority police headquarters, and we were leaving there to go back to Trinity Church to make a dub of the tape, when suddenly the tower to the top collapsed. And I just looked up and saw from basically 2 blocks away this reverse mushroom cloud coming down at me.
I know I said earlier it looked like a banana suddenly being peeled. It's extraordinary.
When I've seen shots of the collapse from far away, and I just can't believe that I was actually there and walked away. I mean, I had to dive underneath. I ran backwards with the camera just pointed behind me, away from the scene, and saw that, have heard about clouds enveloping people and oxygen being depleted, and I just dove under the biggest emergency response vehicle that I could see, stayed there for about 30 seconds, saw nothing but pitch black. I started having difficulty breathing. I thought my oxygen was starting to dwindle, and there was a moment when I said, well, this might be it. And my only chance is to get out and start walking north.
Well, we're very grateful to you. Very grateful you're okay, and that you took these photographs and that you shared them with the public. They're very dramatic. I needn't tell you that, but I'm very grateful to you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Nice to see you. Evan Fairbanks. He's a freelance photographer who was working in Trinity Church today on the edge of Wall Street today when he and his colleagues on a production shoot in a church saw these 2 extraordinary scenes from, to put it directly, from a different angle, because we have seen it so many times, but this is the most dramatic angle we have seen this plane flying at the top of that building. It's quite extraordinary. I want to go to Washington very briefly, because we said the president was on his way, we believe, to Washington from Nebraska, and ABC's Claire Shipman is there, and I gather, Claire, the president wants to...
This is Chicago's #1 news, ABC 7 News at 10.
Images this country will never forget. 2 planes, overpowered by hijackers, plow into New York's World Trade Center. Another plane...
The nightmare began just before 9 a.m. American Flight 11, a Boeing 767 from Boston to Los Angeles, crashed into one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center. Then, 10 minutes later, the second plane, a United flight also from Boston to Los Angeles, crashed into the second tower. The Twin Towers, a symbol of American economic...
In a day filled with images we may never forget, this one stands out. The extraordinary footage of an American Airlines jet slicing through the number 2 tower of the World Trade Center. That image was captured by 40-year-old freelance cameraman Evan Fairbanks, who had been working 2 blocks away.
I suddenly saw a white flash from the left side of the frame, and it lasted long enough for me to be able to identify it as a jet.
When you saw that plane hitting the Trade Center tower, could you actually fathom what you were viewing?
Not at all. It was very surreal. I felt like I was in another dimension, and we weren't even on the same planet. I guess as the human stories start to emerge, and we see more people and we hear more names, it'll become a lot more real to me. But right now, I feel like I'm still in the bubble of the day, and the whole experience is just kind of numbing.
Fairbanks has been a cameraman for 16 years, but today he wasn't operating on experience. It was instinct. And that's what drew him back for one last shot. That's when the tower began to collapse.
I was looking in the viewfinder, and I just saw this reverse mushroom cloud billowing down, and I realized my proximity, and immediately just turned and started running north.
But for Evan Fairbanks, this is the image that will haunt him and us for the rest of our lives.
The image of that plane just coming out of nowhere, coming into the frame, and disappearing into the side, into the south side of the tower, as if a floor had been hollowed out and it was a hangar that it was just landing in. We've seen these images in movies, and we know that it's all artificial, and Hollywood makes it. And it's hard to put together that it's real this time.
6 stories tall, 6 stories of rubble.
We've been saying that almost nothing has happened so far that someone didn't catch on film, on photograph, on tape, and we have with us right now at the desk 2 of the videographers who were there at critical moments. Kevin Sutterfee, who was there and filmed the aftermath, and you met earlier Evan Fairbanks, who shot one of those crucial scenes, one of those searing scenes of the plane going into the second tower. I'm just going to play again the footage that you shot, Evan, and let you tell us once again, when you looked through your lens and looked up, did you grasp what you were seeing, what the camera was recording?
There was no way I could possibly grasp what I was seeing. I just saw a flash come in on the left of the frame. I saw an airplane. I could identify it as an airplane, and I just thought, what is that doing in this area? That's got to be controlled space. And before I finished that thought, it disappeared into the south side of the tower.
You know, that's exactly the thought that we had. We were sitting here on the air live because the first tower had been hit, and we knew something had happened. And we saw that plane come into the frame. We had a little bit more chance to see it before it hit the building than you did, but we saw it come into the frame, and my thought was, well, it's a big plane, but it must be an observation plane. It must be a fire plane. And I thought of the wildfires out west. Maybe it's bringing in water, you know, to fight the fire in the building. The concept that it was going to hit the tower is so foreign to all of us that you couldn't believe what you were seeing. And I still didn't believe it after it happened. Diane said, oh, my God. And I thought, well, that clears up the question of whether or not the first one was an explosion or accidental or whatever. This is a concerted attack on the World Trade Center. But you couldn't believe what you were seeing.
No, absolutely. I still can't believe it, what I'm seeing. I've seen it played back 15 or 20 times. I played it back in my camera 5 times.
Kevin, oh, excuse me. Kevin was there for the aftermath, the sort of counterpart to what you were doing. As we roll this footage, tell us again, as you wandered into the scene, what were you experiencing? You were right in the middle of all of the soot, the ash, the heat.
Basically, what I was experiencing was something I've never seen in my life, basically in person. And I think something that people don't really realize what's going on actually right now in the city. It's like people are walking around outside, sitting at cafes, talking, joking, laughing. It's just disgusting what happened. And I wanted to say about bin Laden, if I heard that he said that he wanted to thank Allah, that he didn't do it, but nobody should be thanked for what happened there. It's ridiculous. It's not.
We saw in your first scenes, we saw the buildings. We saw the architecture, the skeletons of the buildings. When you first went in, did you see people?
No, there's no people anywhere. We were walking around for, I was there all day yesterday and all night, basically, and to find people was very rare. Like, they found 3 people. It's very rare to find people. There's no traces of people. I saw a shoe, and I saw, you know, that's it. There's just too much material.
Again. It looks like an unbelievable movie set, what you saw there.
You can't believe it until you're there. On the TV, it's not even the same. It's, of course, you know. I think you might have walked there. I'm not sure, but
you boil it down to a box that's 21 inches or 24 inches across, and it's not the same.
And as we told everybody last night, when you're walking through it, you're up to your way above your ankles, both in the soot and in the paper, the financial documents, and you look down and they have such a plaintive irrelevance to anything important in life as you're making your way through this complete carpeting of financial documents.
And soot.
Blew out of the window.
But mixed into that is also all these random personal effects, like a pocketbook or a high heel shoe or a glove or something that makes it so human.
Well, as we said, it is a modern phenomenon that almost everything is captured on videotape, and we thank you both for coming in. We've got,
and for bringing us your pictures.
Don't we have John Miller standing by? Did John?
No, John, we have a piece.
And thus learned what parts of the steel columns failed first. Corley's investigators combined this data with a visual analysis of the tower's collapse.
Nobody knew what to do. There was no clear thinking. People were just reacting to kind of save themselves and the
this
people
is
around them.
You're in the same location when the building comes down.
I had been taken downstairs by Port Authority police who knew that I had this videotape. And we were moving actually to go back to the Trinity Church to make them a dub of the tape in a format that they could use on a VHS tape. And suddenly I heard one of the guys say, "Hey, Evan, watch out."
Hang on just a second. If you look in the upper, this now is frozen. And this is an angle of this attack that we have not seen before. At the top of the building on your left, out of the left, will come the building. And watch how the aircraft penetrates the building. Go ahead. Completely in one side and out the other.
It just disappeared. It disappeared like a bad special effect. It disappeared right into the building. I've seen it 6, 7 times now. It's still incomprehensible what is actually happening there. You're right. As a journalist, you have to take yourself away from it, and I'm still not there yet. And the more and more I see it, and as time goes by.
The modern technology enables us to see horror just as we are able to see sport in a variety of different speeds or at a variety of different speeds. And I think you now have a better appreciation than we have had up until now, for which we thank you, Evan, because we see exactly how determined somebody was to do this horrible damage, taking a plane so powerfully and so fast in one side of the building. Tell me more what it's been like for you today as working the street. You were very close this morning and photographing on assignment for a church when things began to happen. So we're going to show your videotape, if we may, though you're principally a still photographer? Or both?
Still and video.
Okay. Can we just look at what your first video is and explain it to us?
I walked out of Trinity Church after we had a blackout in our studio, and one of the studio managers grabbed one of our cameras when we knew what was happening, and I went out and was shooting aftermath.
Good God.
And I suddenly saw a plane flying into my viewfinder and said, gee, it's kind of close for that to be here now, and then realized what happened.
Yeah.
And
this is an angle of this attack that we have not seen before. At the top of the building on your left, out of the left, will come the building. And watch how the aircraft penetrates the building. Go ahead. Completely in one side and out the other.
It just disappeared. It disappeared like a bad special effect. It disappeared right into the building. I've seen it 6, 7 times now. It's still incomprehensible what is actually happening there.
And I think you now have a better appreciation than we have had up until now, for which we thank you, Evan, because we see exactly how determined somebody was to do this horrible damage, taking a plane so powerfully and so fast in one side of the building, other. And was there absolute panic immediately?
Instantly. It was just pandemonium.
You're in the same location when the building comes down.
I had been taken downstairs by Port Authority police who knew that I had this videotape. And we were moving actually to go back to the Trinity Church to make them a dub of the tape in a format that they could use on a VHS tape. And suddenly I heard one of the guys say, hey, Evan, watch out.